Chapter 14 The Unforgivable Curses. The next 2 days passed without great unless you counted Neville melting his sixth cauldron in potions. Professor Snape, who seemed to have attained new levels of vindictiveness, seemed over the summer gave Neville detention, and Neville returned from it in a state of nervous collapse, having been made to dissemble a barrel full of horned toads. "You know why Snape's in such a foul mood, don't you?" said Ron to Harry as they watched Hermione teaching Neville a scoring charm to remove the toad guts from under his fingernails. "Yeah," said Harry, moody. It was common knowledge that Snape really wanted the dark arts job, and he had now failed to get it for the fourth year running. Snape had disliked all of the previous dark arts teachers and shown it, but he seemed strangely weary of displaying avert anonymously to Mad-Eye Moody. Indeed, whenever Harry saw the two of them together at mealtimes or when they passed in the corridors, he had the distinct impression that Snape was avoiding Moody's eye, whether magical or normal. "I reckon Snape's a bit scared of him, you know," Harry said thoughtfully. "Imagine if Moody turned Snape into a horned toad," said Ron, his eyes misting over, and bounced him all around his dungeon. The Gryffindor fourth years were looking forward to Moody's first lesson, so much that they arrived early on Thursday lunchtime and queued up outside his classroom before the bell had even rung. The only person missing was Hermione, who turned up just in time for the lesson. "Been in the library," Harry finished her sentence for her. "Come on, quick, or we won't get decent seats." They hurried into 3 chairs right in front of the teacher's desk, took out their copies of The Dark Forces, a guide to self-protection, and waited, unusually quiet. Soon they heard Moody's distinctive clunking footsteps coming down the corridor, and he entered the room, looking as strange and frightening as ever. They could see his crawled wooden foot protruding from underneath his robes. "You can put those away," he growled, stumping over to his desk and sitting down. "Those books, you won't need them." They returned the books to their bags. Ron looked excited. Moody took out a register, shook his long mane of grizzled gray hair out of his twisted and scarred face, and began to call out names, his normal eye moving steadily down the list, while his magical eyes swiveling around, fixing upon each student as he or she answered. "Right then," he said, when the last person had declared themselves present. "I've had a letter from Professor Lupin about this class. Seems you've had a pretty thorough grounding in tackling dark creatures. You've covered boggarts, red caps, hunky punks, grindy lows, kappas, and werewolves. Is that right?" There was a general murmur of assent. "But you're behind, very behind, on dealing with curses," said Moody. "So I'm here to bring you up to scratch on what wizards can do to each other. I've got 1 year to teach you how to deal with dark." "What aren't you saying?" Ron blurted out. Moody's magical eyes spun around to stare at Ron. Ron looked extremely apprehensive, but after a moment Moody smiled, the first time Harry had seen him do so. The effect was to make his heavily scarred face look more twisted and contorted than ever, but it was nevertheless good to know that he ever did anything as friendly as smile. Ron looked deeply relieved. You'll be Arthur Weasley's son, eh? Moody said. Your father got me out of a very tight corner a few days ago. Yeah, I'm saying just the 1 year. Special favor to Dumbledore. 1 year and then back to my quiet retirement. He gave a harsh laugh and then clapped his ground hands together. So, straight into curses. They come in many strengths and forms. Now, according to the Ministry of Magic, I'm supposed to teach you counter curses and leave it at that. I'm not supposed to show you what illegal dark curses look like until you're in the 6th year. You're not supposed to be old enough to deal with it till then. But Professor Dumbledore's got a higher opinion of your nerves. He reckons you can cope, and I say the sooner you know what you're up against, the better. How are you supposed to defend yourself against something you've never seen? A wizard who's about to put an illegal curse on you isn't going to tell you what he is about to do. He's not going to do it nice and polite to your face. You need to be prepared. You need to be alert and watchful. You need to put that away, Miss Brown, when I'm talking. Lavender jumped and blushed. She had been showing Peabody her completed horoscope under the desk. Apparently, Moody's magical eye could see through the solid wood, as well as out of the back of his head. So, do any of you know which curse are most heavily punished by wizarding law? Several hands rose tentatively into the air, including Ron's and Hermione's. Moody pointed at Ron, though his magical eye was still fixed on Lavender. Said Ron tentatively. My dad told me about one. Is it called the Imperior's Curse or something? Ah, yes, said Moody appreciatively. Your father would know that one. Gave the Ministry a lot of trouble at one time. The Imperior's Curse. Moody got heavily and mismatched feet, opened his desk drawer, and took out a glass jar. 3 large black spiders were scuttling around inside it. Harry felt Ron recoil slightly next to him. Ron hated spiders. Moody reached into the jar, caught one of the spiders, and held it in the palm of his hand so that they could all see it. Then he pointed his wand and muttered, Imperio. The spider leapt from Moody's hand on a fine thread of silk and began to swing backward and forward as though on a trapeze. It stretched out its legs rigidly, then did a backflip, breaking the thread and landing on the desk, where it began to cartwheel in circles. Moody jerked his wand, and the spider rose onto 2 of its hind legs and went into what was unmistakably a tap dance. Everyone was laughing, except Moody. Think it's funny, do you? He growled. You'd like it. What if I did it to you? The laughter died away almost instantly. Total control, said Moody quietly, as the spider balled itself up and began to roll over and over. I could make it jump out of the window, drown itself, throw itself down one of your throats. Ron gave an involuntary shudder. Years back, there were a lot of witches and wizards being controlled by the Imperious Curse, said Moody. And Harry knew what he was talking about. The days in which Voldemort had been all-powerful. Some job for the Ministry trying to sort out who was being forced to act and who was acting of their own free will. The imperious curse can be fought, and I'll be teaching you how, but it takes real strength of character, and not everyone's got it. Better avoid being hit with it if you can. Constant vigilance, he barked, and everyone jumped. Moody picked up the somersaulting spider and threw it back into the jar. Anyone else know one? Another illegal curse? Hermione's hand flew into the air and so to Harry's slight surprise did Neville's. The only class in which Neville usually volunteered information was herbology, which was easily his best subject. Neville looked surprised at his own daring. Yes, said Moody, his magical eye rolling right over to fix on Neville. There's one, the Cocardus curse, said Neville in a small but distant voice. Moody was looking very intently at Neville, this time with both eyes. Your name's Longbottom, he said, his magical eye swooping down to check the register again. Neville nodded nervously, but Moody made no further inquiries. Turning back to the class at large, he reached into the jar for the next spider and placed it upon the desktop, where it remained motionless, apparently too scared to move. The Cocardus curse, said Moody, needs to be a bit bigger for you to get the idea, he said, pointing his wand at the spider in Garrow. The spider swelled. It was now larger than a tarantula. Abandoning all pretense, Ron pushed his chair backward as far away from Moody's desk as possible. Moody raised his wand again and pointed it at the spider and muttered, Gorkiro. At once, the spider's legs bent in upon its body. It rolled over and began to twitch horribly, rocking from side to side. No sound came from it, but Harry was sure that if he could have given voice, it would have been screaming. Moody did not remove his wand, and the spider started to shudder and jerk more violently. Stop it, Hermione said shrilly. Harry looked around at her. She was looking not at the spider but at Neville, and Harry was following her gaze, saw that Neville's hands were clenched upon the desk in front of him, his knuckles white, his eyes wide and horrified. Moody raised his wand. The spider's legs relaxed, but it continued to twitch. Meduso, Moody muttered, and the spider shrank back to its proper size. He put it back into the jar. Pain, said Moody softly. You don't need thumb screws or knives to torture someone if you can't perform the Cocardus curse. That's one way. That one was very popular once too. Right. Anyone know any others? Harry looked around. From the looks on everyone's faces, he guessed that they were all wondering what was going to happen to the last spider. Hermione's hand shook slightly as, for the third time, she raised it into the air. Yes, said Moody, looking at her. Avada Kedavra, Hermione whispered. Several people looked uneasily around at her, including Ron. Ah, said Moody, another slight smile twisting his lopsided mouth. Yes, the last word. Avada Kedavra, the killing curse. He put his hand into the glass jar, and almost as though it knew what was coming, the third spider scuttered frantically around the bottom of the jar, trying to evade Moody's fingers. But he trapped it and placed it upon the desktop. He started to seclude frantically across the wooden surface. Moody raised his wand, and Harry felt a sudden thrill of foreboding. Avada Kedavra, Moody roared.